The doors to the trauma bay flew open. A wounded man was rushed inside. His blood pressure was collapsing. His breathing was getting worse. The doctors had only minutes to save him. But then the military K9 moved. Not the doctors, not the nurses, not the security team watching from the hallway. The dog, a 72-pound Belgian Malinois named Sentry, planted himself directly in front of the gurney, and he refused to move. The handler gave the command once. Out! Out! Nothing. He tried again. Heel. Heel. Nothing. Stand down. Still nothing. The dog wouldn't even let the crash cart pass. Everyone in the trauma bay froze, because this wasn't normal. Military working dogs were trained to obey, and Sentry was one of the best. But tonight, something had made him draw a line, and he wasn't letting anyone cross it. Nurse Vera Callum stared at the dog. Then she looked at the wounded man behind him. His paperwork identified him as Marcus Webb, but the dog tags around his neck carried information she wasn't clear to see. His chest wound was catastrophic. Vera estimated he had about 11 minutes before it became fatal. She couldn't waste another second. She crouched slowly. The handler, Specialist Pedig, looked nervous. "I'd given the command 4 times, he said. "He's not responding." Vera didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on the dog. Sentry's ears were flat. His body was low. His eyes were locked directly onto hers. It wasn't aggression. It was suspicion, almost as if he was waiting for something. Vera slowly placed her hands on her knees, palms open. "Hey," she said. Her voice was quiet, not gentle. There was a difference. "I'm going to help him, okay?" Sentry's growl lowered. Vera slowly turned her left wrist upward, and that's when everything changed. 3 dark blue lines formed a circle just beneath her wrist. An old tattoo, faded, slightly crooked, a mark Vera had carried since she was 22. She had almost had it removed twice, but something had always stopped her. She had never been able to explain why. Sentry stared at the tattoo, and the dog went completely still. He leaned forward, slowly, very slowly, and pressed his nose against Vera's wrist. He held it there for 3 seconds. Then he stepped aside. The entire trauma bay seemed to exhale. "Go," Vera said. The crash cart rushed through, and the surgery began. For the next 4 hours, Vera barely had time to think. The man's blood pressure crashed. The chest tube went in. The attending physician questioned her catheter placement twice, and both times Vera was right. When the surgery finally ended, Marcus Webb was alive. That was all that mattered. Vera walked into a supply closet, closed the door, and for 2 minutes she allowed herself to feel whatever she had been holding back. Then she washed her face and went back to work. She thought the strange incident with the dog was over. She was wrong. At 3 in the morning, 2 men in civilian clothes appeared. The first was broad-shouldered and somewhere in his mid-40s. He introduced himself as Harlan. No last name, no badge. The second man was younger, tired eyes, a notepad, a pen he kept clicking. "Nurse Callum," Harlan said. You were the first person to approach the patient. Vera was exhausted. She had already been working for 14 hours. Her shoulder hurt. She was running on caffeine and stubbornness. "Yes," she said. "How did you get past the dog?" Vera stared at him. "I showed him my wrist." Harlan's eyes immediately dropped to a tattoo. "The tattoo?" "Yes. I didn't know military working dogs could read," Vera said. The younger man almost laughed. Harlan didn't. That particular dog was trained in a specialized program. Vera said nothing. "The recognition protocols are classified," Harlan continued, "but certain symbols were used for trust verification." Vera's expression changed. "Where did you get that tattoo?" She didn't answer immediately. "I was 22. "Where?" "I don't remember exactly." That wasn't the answer he wanted. Harlan leaned back. "The man you helped save tonight is part of an ongoing operation." Vera finally looked up. Someone tried to access his room twice before surgery. Her eyes narrowed. Someone with credentials that should never have cleared the second checkpoint. The room became very quiet. "The hospital has a leak," Vera said. We believe so. And you're telling me this because... Harlan paused. Because the dog doesn't respond to strangers. He looked directly at her. He responds to the program. Vera felt something cold settle in her stomach. The only people in that program were vetted. He paused. So either there's been a serious breach. His eyes moved to the tattoo. Or you're not as much of a stranger as your file suggests. Vera looked down at the table. She already knew what he was going to ask next. What does my file say? Certified RN Johns Hopkins, University of Maryland. Harlan paused. Before that, nothing. 2 years you haven't accounted for. Vera had spent years hoping those 2 years would stay buried. Not forgotten. Just untouched. Those years were hers. And she wasn't ready to hand them over to 2 strangers in a conference room at 3 in the morning. Those years aren't relevant, she said. Harlan started to respond. Vera stopped him. No. Her voice was firm. Those years are mine. She stood. What I can tell you is that the dog let me through, because dogs know things we don't. She looked toward the door. And the man on that table is alive because I did my job. That's all I have for you. Harlan watched her leave. Then he gave her one final warning. The person who tried to access the room. Vera stopped. We think it may be someone on staff. What department? Harlan answered with one word. Nursing. Nursing. Vera walked away. But she didn't sleep. Because something about that conversation didn't feel finished. At 6:45 that morning, she saw him. Callum. Patient transport. Blue lanyard. A slight limp. Vera had seen him walking normally just 2 weeks earlier. Now he moved differently. She watched him badge through a door he had no reason to enter. He hesitated before entering the code. Then he looked toward the corridor leading to the ICU. Vera's instincts took over. She called the number Harlan had left. Callum, she said. Patient transport. Blue lanyard. A pause. He just badged through the east corridor checkpoint. Another pause. He's heading toward the ICU. Harlan's voice came through. Stay where you are. Vera hung up and followed him. She was tired. Her shoulder was still hurting. She had every reason to stay out of it. But none of those reasons were strong enough, because Vera had learned something about herself a long time ago. When someone needed help, she couldn't walk away. Callum stopped outside a supply closet 12 feet from the ICU. He looked left, then right. But he didn't look behind him. That was his mistake. Hey! Callum spun around. Vera stood 6 feet away. Badge clicked to her scrubs. Arms at her sides. Her expression calm. You're not supposed to be back here, he said. Neither are you. For a moment, neither moved. Then Callum made a sudden move toward the door. And that's when a familiar sound came from the hallway. Pause. Sentry appeared around the corner. Pedig held his lead. 2 of Harlan's men followed behind him. Callum stopped. Sentry sat down, the exact same way he had stood in front of the trauma bay. Still, focused, certain. The dog looked at Callum, and everyone in the hallway knew. Whatever decision Sentry had made, he had already made it. Vera looked at Callum. It's done. It's done. She wasn't sure whether she was talking to him, or to herself. Later that morning, Harlan found Vera sitting on a bench outside the hospital. The parking lot looked peaceful. Almost. He sat beside her. For a while, neither spoke. Callum has a brother, Harlan finally said. Overseas. Vera looked at him. Someone found leverage. Harlan nodded. They always find something. He's talking, Harlan said. We'll get where we need to go. Vera looked toward the hospital. The man in the ICU? He's going to make it. Looks like it. She finally allowed herself to breathe. Then Harlan brought up the tattoo again. We're not doing this, Vera said. I'm not asking you to explain it. He paused. I ran the symbol against our records. Vera looked at him. It doesn't appear in any current program database. She frowned. But it does appear. Harlan chose his words carefully. In a program that was officially closed 11 years ago. Vera said nothing. A joint training initiative, he continued. Navy personnel, Allied units, civilian contractors. The kind of program that doesn't appear in standard records. Vera stared at the faded symbol on her wrist. Harlan looked toward the parking lot. That would explain why a dog recognized a mark that technically doesn't exist anymore. Then he told her something she hadn't expected. Sentry's original trainer came out of that program. Vera looked up. Someone spoke very highly of a medic he worked with. A young woman. Stubborn as hell. Good under pressure. And the kind of person who couldn't stop herself from helping someone, even when she should have walked the other direction. Vera looked at her wrist. 3 faded lines. A circle. A mark from a place she couldn't name. A man whose real name she had never known. And 2 years of her life she had refused to explain. That isn't a compliment, she said. That's a liability. Harlan smiled slightly. Maybe both. Vera asked about the medic. She's okay? Harlan nodded. Retired. Coastal Maine. Fishing boat. Paxel. 2 dogs. Vera smiled faintly. Good. She stood. Her shoulder hurt. She needed sleep. But she knew she would be back. She always came back. She always showed up. That had been true when she was 22. And it was still true now. Nurse Callum. Nurse Callum. She stopped. Harlan looked at her. For what it's worth. He paused. He would have died without you. Vera didn't answer immediately. She thought about those 11 minutes. The dog blocking the door. The tattoo on her wrist. And the strange instinct that had made her turn it over without thinking. I know, she finally said. Not with pride. Not with arrogance. Just as a fact. Something she had carried for years. Something she understood without needing anyone to explain it. She walked to her car. The morning sun was getting stronger. Inside the hospital, Sentry was still doing what he had been trained to do. Watching. Waiting. Protecting someone who needed him. Vera sat behind the wheel. She turned her wrist toward the sunlight. The tattoo looked exactly the same. 3 lines. 1 circle. A secret that had followed her for years. She still couldn't decide whether it meant something or nothing. For now, she decided it meant one thing. She needed to go home. She needed to sleep. She started the car and drove. The road opened in front of her. And for the first time in a long time, Vera allowed herself to wonder about the 2 years she had left behind. About the program that supposedly no longer existed. About the young woman who had once been her. And about whether some stories ever really end, or whether they simply wait until the right dog recognizes you.